Welcome back to the What is Love series. So if you didn't know, all of these characteristics of love that I've been teaching on come right out of an ancient book called 1 Corinthians, which is contained in an ancient collection of books called the Bible. As a person who has studied the original languages of the Bible, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek, I have come to completely respect the writings of the ancient Hebrew people. Today we call it the Bible, but in their day it was not called that, and depending on what part of their history timeline we're discussing, they maybe didn't even have a collection of books at all. Though their writings are used to uphold certain religious viewpoints in our culture and world today, we must realize those viewpoints are not always the same as the ancient people of the book. What I'm saying is we may be holding beliefs that are not actually true to what the original language of the book is saying. A simple example, Jesus never heard the word Christian. During his lifetime, he nor his followers were ever called this. So historically speaking, being a Christ follower or student of his teachings doesn't mean you have to call yourself a Christian. Christ never said that. Christ never did that. He never told his followers to do that. Now, some of you may know there's the ancient scripture from 1 John 4 that says, God is love. The two words are synonymous, and that might be troubling for some, and that's because there is the illusion of love and there's the real thing. So religion may say it believes God is love, but what if we flipped it around and said love is God? I mean, if God is love, how can it be that love is not God? Okay, so just because our culture has twisted the word love does not mean true love is not God. It does mean false love is not God. So here's an example of how we can imagine we know what love is and still not truly know. If someone says, I love God, and yet hates their brother or sister, they are a liar. For the one who does not love brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. This also comes from 1 John chapter 4, verse 20, right out of the Bible. Again, there's the real thing love and there's the false thing love. You can imagine you know it and that you're doing it right and still not be. Therefore, it can also be said that there's the real thing God and there's the false thing God. You can imagine you know it and have the experience of God and still not have it. So I haven't talked about God in the parts of this series because people think they already know who and what God is, just like they think they know what love is. But if you actually know God and love, why all the division? Why the judgment? Why the need to force feed others? Why not just be the example? After all, God is love, and the ancient writings encourage us to love your neighbor as yourself. So do you appreciate being force-fed? Do you appreciate being judged negatively or being hated or treated as if you don't belong? Do you love yourself? Because that's the encouragement. Love your neighbor as yourself. But how can you do that if you don't know how to love yourself? If you don't truly love yourself? You may say you love yourself, but you're still talking about the false love and not the real love. Do you actually love yourself? Furthermore, if God is love, it is not necessary to ask why I'm not talking about God. God and love in truth are one and the same. If I'm talking about love as it truly is, and I am, that's what this series is about, then I am also talking about the greater intelligent being called God, which is synonymous with love. Now, if I just talk about God, as my inquirer or commenter suggests, that would just solve everything, wouldn't it? That would clear everything up real quick, right? Perhaps it would for the religious mindset, but I think there's more reason to why the author of this passage in 1 Corinthians 13 never mentions God in the whole chapter. If you'll remember, in one of the previous parts I made, I said love is older than humanity. So even the topic of love is not simply biblical. It is older than the Bible. Love is the greatest, which is precisely why the author says the greatest of these is love in verse 13 of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. So though I'm reading the verses from this chapter, the subject of these verses, love, is older than the verses themselves and predates not simply the Bible, but all of writing, because God is love. The picture we hold in our mind of God is not an accurate picture of God, and is therefore also not an accurate picture of love. The picture we hold in our mind of love is not an accurate picture of love, and is therefore also not an accurate picture of God. So, while I've been attempting to give shape to the idea and word love by explaining its characteristics, I still haven't given you a definition of love. You'll have to stay tuned for that, and it will come directly out of the ancient languages, beyond mere dictionaries and reference books, because you see, love is also the experience. It is beyond logic, and it is beyond sexuality as we might think of it within the human matrix. The definition is amazing, and it might be unlike anything you've ever heard, because God is love and love is God. But I'm going to bring a fresh and very unique way of saying that than I think most of us have ever heard before. Stay tuned.